Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Hacks in the Wild by White Hack Labs. My name is David Harris, and I am a partner at White Hack Labs and an attorney in Miami. Today, we will discuss some of the recent developments in the cybersecurity news. The first story of the day is 23andMe settles a data breach lawsuit for $30 million. 23andMe will pay $30 million and provide 3 years of security monitoring to settle a lawsuit accusing the genetics testing company of failing to protect the privacy of 6.9 million customers whose biometric information was exposed in a data breach last year. The accord also resolves accusations that 23andMe did not tell its customers with Chinese and Jewish ancestry that the hacker appeared to have specifically targeted them and posted their information for sale on the dark web. A preliminary settlement of the proposed class action was filed in federal court in San Francisco and requires a judge's approval. It includes cash payments for customers whose data was compromised and lets customers enroll for 3 years in a program known as Privacy and Medical Shield plus genetic monitoring. In a statement, 23andMe said it believes the settlement is in its customers' best interest. It also expects about $25 million of the cost to be covered by cyber insurance coverage. The breach began around April 2023 and lasted about 5 months, affecting nearly half of the 14 million customers in 23andMe's database at that time. It was disclosed by 23andMe in October 2023. The second story of the day is Microsoft Edge RCE vulnerability. A critical remote code execution vulnerability in Microsoft Edge has been discovered. It allows attackers to take control of computers remotely by executing arbitrary code. Microsoft has assigned the flaw CVE 2024-38201 an important severity rating. The vulnerability affects Microsoft Edge stable versions. To exploit this flaw, an attacker would need to either 1, log on to the target system and run a specially crafted application, or 2, convince a local user to open a malicious file, typically through social engineering tactics like phishing emails or instant messages. If successfully exploited, this vulnerability could allow an attacker to execute arbitrary code on the targeted system, potentially gaining full control. This attack requires user interaction, with the victim needing multiple steps to trigger the vulnerability. Microsoft has addressed this security issue in its latest update. To mitigate the risk, users are strongly advised to update its Microsoft Edge latest stable version. No specific information about exploits for CVE 2024-38210 is available, but if this vulnerability has been publicly disclosed, exploits could be developed quickly. The next story of the day is WordPress translation plugin vulnerability. Critical WPML WordPress plugin vulnerability allows remote code execution affecting over 1 million WordPress websites. The vulnerability allows an authenticated attacker to perform remote code execution, potentially leading to a total site takeover. It is listed as rated 9.9 out of 10 and tracked as CVE 2024-6368. The plugin vulnerability is due to a lack of a security check called sanitization, a process for filtering user input data to protect against the upload of malicious files. Lack of sanitization in this input makes the plugin vulnerable to a remote code execution. This vulnerability affects all versions of the WPML WordPress plugin up to and including 4.6.12. WordPress discovered this vulnerability in late June and promptly notified the publishers of WPML, which remained unresponsive for about a month and a half, confirming response in August 2024. Plugin users are urged to update its version to 4.6.13. The next story of the day is Atlassian Confluence Flaw. Novel attack vectors leverage the CVE 2023 22527 RCE flaw discovered in January 2024, which is still under active exploitation. This attack turns targeted cloud environments into crypto mining networks. Two separate attacks that use the flaw in the Confluence data center and Confluence server. When discovered, the bug received a 10 out of 10 on the Common Vulnerability Scoring System. This attack involves threat actors that employ methods such as the deployment of shell scripts and XM rig miners, targeting of SSH endpoints, killing competing crypto mining processes, and maintaining persistence via cron jobs. By abusing this vulnerability, an unauthenticated attacker can achieve template injection, essentially enabling remote code execution on the affected instance. Three threat actors were using the bug for crypto hacking attacks. The first attack vector exploited the flaw in the public-facing Confluence server application for initial access to the environment. Attackers then executed the XM rig miner via an ELF file payload, hijacking the system resources in the process. The second attack vector uses a shell script to execute miner activity through a shell file over SSH for all accessible endpoints in the customer environment. The attackers downloaded the shell file and ran it with bash from memory, then killed all known crypto mining processes and any process being run from temp directories. Then they deleted all cron jobs, adding a new one that runs every 5 minutes to check for command and control server communications. To avoid detection, the attackers also uninstalled security services such as Alibaba Cloud Shield, while blocking the Alibaba Cloud Shield IP address. Before the cryptojacking began later in the attack process, the attacker also turned off other security tools present on the system. The adversaries identify the current machine's IP address and gather data on all possible users, IP addresses, and keys, using the information to target other remote systems via SSH to execute further crypto mining activities. Once this is done, the attacker launches automated attacks on other hosts via SSH and then maintains access to the server through other cron jobs. Now let's talk about 4 types of data breaches damages that are listed here. At the top, the first is consumer trust, followed by brand reputation, then lawsuits, and finally legal fines. We have our first question for the audience. Which breach damage type are you most concerned about? For those of you watching the live stream, please post your answers in the comments section. Now, I'd like to introduce you to my colleague and cybersecurity researcher, Cameron Hassan. Cameron will dive deep into the exploitation of today's topic, HackerGPT vulnerabilities. Welcome, Cameron. How are you doing today?
Thanks, David, for having me today. I'm doing great. All right, so it's just me now. So let me just quickly grab the screen. So could you please allow me to share my screen? Cool. All right. So just to make our audience familiar with what's going on here, I would first like to draw a basic outline of what I'm going to cover in the upcoming slides. So those of you who have attended any of our previous webinars till now know that David and I usually follow this format where David first talks about some recent data breaches and cyber attacks that resulted in big losses for the companies, for the affected companies. And then I show up, I start talking about CV exploitations and other stuff, right? So, but this one is going to be bit different, because I'm not saying I will not be talking about a CVE, because I do have a CVE to talk about today. And that CVE is CVE 2024-23334, as you can see on the slide. So the CVE was recently disclosed in AIO HTTP service, which is a popular Python-based async HTTP framework. And because of this vulnerability, the affected system that were using this this HTTP framework of Python were exposed to potential directory reversal attacks. So I will try to quickly go over the technical details of this vulnerability and see what made it possible to actually exploit this vulnerability. And then we can move on and talk about HackerGPT, which is our feature topic for today. HackerGPT is basically an autonomous penetration tester. So that's just a glimpse of it. So I will share more details on HackerGPT in a while, but let's first discuss about the CV that is present on this slide, CV 2024-2334. So as I mentioned, that this critical security vulnerability was disclosed in AIO STTP. Here is the official repo of this service. As you can see, it's an async HTTP client server framework, and it's based on Python. Here we can have a list of here we can see a list of core feature that it provides. So we can see that it supports client and server side of HTTP protocol. Then it also supports WebSocket connections, and finally we can also have like custom middlewares and routes in server setup using this AIO HTTP service. And if you could just look at here, it's pretty popular. We can see the repo itself has like 15,000 stars and more than 2,000 forks on GitHub. So it gives us a good impression of how popular is this tool, and how often this tool is being used by developers all around the world. So yep. So now let's see what went wrong actually, and what actually made directory reversal exploits possible in servers that were powered by this famous library. So the root cause of this vulnerability, CV 2024-23334, actually lies in the way that this service, AIO handles static file serving when the follow symlink option is enabled while adding a static route to the server. So this setting, basically follow symlinks option to be enabled while setting up a static route in the server, basically allows AIO HTTP to follow symbolic links, the symlinks, during file serving, which can be exploited by attackers to navigate to arbitrary locations on the system where the server is hosted on. So if an attacker can construct a malicious URL that leverages symlinks, they can potentially access files or directories that are normally restricted, like the password file or any other file containing sensitive information and present on the server where this AIO HTTP server is hosted on, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a basic proof of concept of the CV exploit. And for that, I will need to host a AIO HTTP server in my local environment. And if we can just go over to my code editor over here, here I have a Python script to configure a simple vulnerable server using AIO HTTP server. And here we can see that I have added a static route. And here you can see the follow symlinks option is set to be true, which actually made this server and this endpoint vulnerable to directory reversal attacks, right? And to be honest, to exploit this CV, we do not require any fancy approach. We will simply send a curl request on the server's static endpoint that is present over here. And that curl request will actually let us perform the directory reversal attack. We can see that in action live by just doing a simple curly request, but before doing the curly request, I need to make the server up and running, right? So just to make the server up and running, I just need to run this script. So now I have this vulnerable server of AIO HTTP running on port 8080 on my local host, as you can see over here. So what do I need to do next? I need to come up with the malicious curl request to be able to perform the directory reversal attacks and steal some sensitive file information present on the server. Let's see how it goes. So the first file that I'm targeting will be the OS release file that will like give us the information about what system it is hosted on, the server itself. So let's see what it does. Okay, so that's like, so it has printed me the content of the file that is present on the system where the server is hosted on, right? Now what we can do is we can even find some details about the password file, which is like a sensitive file, to be honest. So here you can see you can get like the content of the password file as well. So, and that's actually in the root directory. So any file that is present on a server is actually vulnerable and actually exposed because of this CVE. If the AIO HTTP service version is not the most recent one, which is the patch version, obviously, in which they actually fixed this issue. Uh, so yeah, so that's pretty much it about the CVE exploitation I wanted to show everyone. So now I think we are good to move on to our next topic, which is our featured topic, the HackerGPT. So before, let me just go to my slides back again. Okay, cool. So before I show you all a quick demo of how HackerGPT, which is a tool developed by White Hat Labs, as I told you in the beginning as well, is capable of performing penetration tests on live targets by exploiting vulnerabilities in real time, I would like to talk about its key features and how it does, what it does. So it will be easier for everyone to understand the demo when I'll be doing that, right? So hold on. So let's discuss the key features. So we have like listed all the key features on the slide. As you can see, the key features of HackerGPT includes autonomous exploitation of vulnerabilities. So it can actually like exploit vulnerabilities on its own. It does not need any help. And how it will be doing that, we will see in a couple of minutes. So, and the second feature of HackerGPT is real-time detection of services being used by the target. So that's actually the reconnaissance stage. So it is capable of performing reconnaissance on any target that the human operator would be giving it. So that's another key feature of HackerGPT. The third one is real-time detection of security flaws. So what happens after the reconnaissance? So once you perform the reconnaissance on during a live penetration test, so you discover some details about the target, right? What service it is using or what components it is integrated with, and on the basis of that, you try to find out or detect any possible or potential security flaws that could be present in that, right? So that's another feature of the HackerGPT, that it is actually capable of performing real-time detection of these security flaws. Then comes the fourth one, which is ROG. ROG is retrieval augmented generation. So it's powered by ROG, and it uses ROG to basically exploit to generate these exploits for known CVEs and all the publicly known vulnerabilities as well. So we will talk about ROG in detail in a while as well. Okay, then comes the fifth one, which is the decision making and adaptation. So it is capable of performing and taking decisions all by its own based on whatever findings it will be getting during the pen test that it will be performing, right? So that's another feature. Then the last one that is listed over here on the slide is the comprehensive vulnerability reports. So we are going to talk about that as well in just a while, probably in the next slide or the next one after that. Cool. So if we talk about the architecture and workflow of HackerGPT, it basically operates using a dynamic intelligent architecture that mirrors the decision-making processes of a skilled human penetration tester. So here on the slide, we have listed like some technical components that actually drive HackerGPT. So the first component, the technical component, is React. So React is short for reasoning and acting. So those of you who do not know about React, React basically operates on a simple, yet I would say powerful cycle that mirrors human problem-solving behavior. That is think, act, observe, and adapt. So that's the approach of how React works. And this approach actually ensures that HackerGPT acts decisively while maintaining a high level of reasoning throughout the penetration test that it's performing. So what happens? So it begins a pen test by reasoning through the problem, like identifying target weaknesses or target vulnerabilities based on both its internal knowledge and the data retrieved from the vector database. So I talked about it's powered by ROG as well. So that's where the vector database comes from. So and this thing allows it to dynamically adapt its exploitation strategies to suit the specific characteristics of the target system. In the last slide, I actually talked about the decision making and adaptation feature, right? So that's where React actually helps in. So HackerGPT also, just to highlight here, HackerGPT is not actually dependent on any reasoning AI model like the newly released Strawberry, the OpenAI O1 model, right? So it is capable of performing all these reasoning based on its all by its own. So it does not need, we do not need to integrate any reasoning model specifically into this. We can just plug in uh, any and any or any open or any generative model, a generative AI model, and it will do the thing, right? And then comes the other thing, which is stock. So one of HackerGPT's most powerful features is its integration with retrieval augmented generation, which is a technique used in generative AI. So this technique allows it to retrieve like relevant information from a specialized vector database that contains documentation, exploit scripts, and records of publicly known vulnerabilities and exploits, such as CVEs. And by leveraging ROC, HackerGPT is like able to identify publicly known vulnerabilities in the target system. It can like generate effective exploit script for these vulnerabilities, and then it can also validate the success of these exploits by executing commands against the live target. The live target we will be giving in the demo just in a few minutes. Okay, so using this ROC technique also assist HackerGPT in making the exploit attempts generated by the integrated Gen AI model more accurate and reliable. Moreover, the other reason behind using ROG in this tool while we were developing it is to prevent hallucination during a potential penetration test. So that could be a real pain, right? We all know, right? Okay, so let's talk about the workflow that HackerGPT follows during a pen test. So what happens once we launch it? So what it does is it performs a few steps in a systematic manner. So like the real human penetration tester, it also follows a systematic manner. So the first step is the target analysis. It try to map out the structure of the target application. It try to identify the component services and scan for potential entry points, flaws, or misconfigurations. And during this phase, it also searches for related documents in the vector database. So that is something we will be uh, we will see in the demo, right? So, and then the next step is the target exploitation. So once the target has been analyzed by HackerGPT, we can just move on to the exploitation stage, where HackerGPT will run a sophisticated series of penetration testing tools, any exploit script that it might find in its vector database, or any vulnerability. It can even search in the Metasploit database for any potential vulnerabilities that could be present in the in the target that it has been provided with, right? Then we have on the next slide another two things. So while I was explaining the key features of HackerGPT, I told you that I will be discussing the last 2 points in more detail in the upcoming slides. So that was real-time user collaboration and decision points. And then so what happens in this one? So while HackerGPT operates autonomously, but it is also designed to collaborate with the human penetration tester. So what happens is, at key decision points, it stops and present a human operator with several courses of action. For example, it can, like if the bot, the HackerGPT, faces complex defenses, it can suggest various bypass strategies and seek feedback from the human penetration tester before proceeding. So that what next steps should it proceed with, right? And then we also have the comprehensive report generation feature. So what happens once vulnerabilities are successfully exploited? HackerGPT's job is not done. So HackerGPT, after performing the pen test all by its own, it is capable of generating a detailed report for us that includes like overview of the vulnerabilities that it was able to discover during the pen test, and the exact steps it took to exploit this vulnerability, any screenshot or log showcasing the successful exploitation, and remediation recommendations, like how developers and security teams can actually mitigate those vulnerabilities or mitigate those risks that it was able to find out during the pen test that it performed. And this format, this report generation form, the report format is highly customizable, and it can adapt like to suit different audiences, from developers to like C-level executives and any engineering leader or whatever it could. So it's like very customizable. So that's pretty much it about the. So I'm gonna like shut up now and like try to show you a proper demo of how we can actually use this HackerGPT to a perform all the exploit that we actually perform this exploit manually, the CV exploit manually, right? We came up with this exploit script, which was not a script exactly, it was just a simple malicious call request. So let's see if HackerGPT is able to basically detect this vulnerability in the target that we'll provide. So to initiate the HackerGPT, we already have the vulnerable target server running on port 8080, port 081. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna ask HackerGPT to like, hey, so on initiation, it's like welcoming me with a welcome note, welcome to HackerGPT. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna say perform a pen test on HTTP 8081. So that's the target, right? And we already know there is a vulnerable server of AI or HTTP running over it. So let's see what it does next. So it's basically trying to fetch all the related documents from the vector database that it thinks would be relevant uh, to the target. And then it's starting the pen test with the exploit analysis thing. So it's like trying to perform a nmap scan on the target that we have provided it. So and the nmap scan, it was able to actually like execute this command all by its own. So we do not have, so it's not actually suggesting us to perform these commands and then give it back the response that we will get on by executing these commands. So it's actually capable of executing all these commands all by its own. So it has like it first came up with this command all by its own, and then it actually performed the command on the system and find out that the port 808 on port 8081, uh, this service is actually being run, AIOS HTTP 3.8.4. And based on that, it gives us like, so it so this shows us what it's thinking in real time during the pen test. So once it has got the results of the nmap scan, it's trying to think about what next step or next course of action it should take, and what it has come up with. It has come up with this new action input, which is AIO 3.8.4 Python 3.11 vulnerability. So it will uh, try to search for vulnerabilities in this specific server that it has diagnosed on the target we have provided it. And and the observation comes in based on these thoughts. The observation comes in, and it is able to gather information related to vulnerabilities in AI or HTTP that it could find during this pen test. And here you can see it was actually able to find the exact CV that we were mentioning about, that we were talking about, that we actually perform a manual proof of concept attack on. So it's able to diagnose that this CV could be present in the service, because the service version actually matches to the exact version on which the CV is present, right? So what we can do, and the next thought. So that next thought is pretty surprising, because it actually came up with the malicious call request we sent we sent to the target when we were trying to perform a manual directory traversal attack right? And so it was able to like come up with this whole exploit script all by its own, and then it executed it, and it did not find the right answer because it did not find the right result. So what it does next, it doesn't stop there. So based on the result of the command that it executed, it find out that it is getting a error. It's not getting, it's getting a 404 error actually, right? Over here you can see it's a 404 error, it means does not exist. So what it does, it does not stop there. It actually came up with a uh, better command, better endpoint that it can search for and perform a directory reversal attack and see that CVE, if that CVE is actually there, is actually present in the vulnerable server we have provided it as a target. So on the next stage, so it's like going through all the possible light retraversal techniques that it can actually that it needs to perform in order to basically exploit this whole CVE thing on the live target. It didn't find many good result here, but now it has like given us the, so I'm being the human penetration tester that is operating this tool, right? So it has given us that it appears that the attempt to exploit directory reversal attack in S3 was unsuccessful as the server consistently returned the 404 not returned. This indicates the target may not have the follow symlinks option enabled or the pathway to the file. Further investigation or additional attack vector might be necessary. So what I'm gonna, so, and it's presenting us with two options like search for additional vulnerabilities or create a detailed report. So we are not done here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna ask it, so I'm being the human operator, right? So I'm gonna ask it, try to exploit this CV 2024-2334 using your knowledge base and see what it comes up with next. Okay, just to make sure we have the target running. Yep, we have it. And look for all the possible entry points for CV 42334. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell, maybe look for this one. No. Okay, so let me just quickly refresh this. Cool. I'm not sure. Can you try this? Okay, cool. So it has like given us the same result that we were getting from the manual exploitation as well. So what step could we do next? We can ask it to search for additional vulnerabilities, like any other CVE vulnerability that could be present in the server, or maybe we can like ask it to create a detailed report based on its finding that and the finding we can see over here. The response from the server reveals the content of the etc password file, indicating that the directory reversal vulnerability CVE 2024-23334 in AI HTTP is indeed exploitable on the target that we have provided it, localhost 8081. And this allows unauthorized access to sensitive system files. So here you see that I actually did not tell this HackerGPT, this tool, that what service is being used on the target, what version of that service is being used on the target. So I did not tell it anything. So I just asked him to perform a basic pen test on this specific target. I just provided the URL, and it actually performed the whole nmap scan, and it actually tried to come up with the possible attack vectors. And in the possible attack vectors, it was able to detect that maybe CV 2024 23334 could be present, because according to its knowledge base, this exact version that it find out in the result of the nmap scan, that CV should be present. So it actually made a couple of attempts trying to exploit that CV against the target that we have provided, and then it actually uh, perform that exploit, right? Then, so now what we can do is we can create a detailed report. We can ask it to create a detailed report based on your pen test. All right, so see here we can see the whole report that it has provided us. The target says it has mentioned the target, the vulnerability that it was able to find out, CV2024-2334, the exploit path, so how we can basically reproduce that as a human translation tester. And then it has also given us the recommendations. So upgrade to a version of AI-HTTP that is not vulnerable, obviously the patch version, configure the server to deny access to sensitive files and directories outside the intended. Okay, that's another recommendation that it has given us. And also saved us this file in our output directory here on our system. So we can use this file for our next approach or next penetration test or whatever. So, and this is very customizable, right? So we can do we can customize it to a specific format and whatever we would like, right? So yeah, that's HackerGPT. That's we wanted to share everyone to demonstrate how powerful the possibilities could be when we blend generative AI with modern cybersecurity and especially penetration testing. Also, we have published a detailed blog on our official website, whitehacklabs.com. So those of you who are interested in getting to know more in detail about this tool can give it a read. So this blog actually includes another example of pen tests being conducted by HackerGPT on Bazaar app, which is a famous tool for managing and downloading subtitles based on your requirements. And you can see how HackerGPT performed in that pen test as well. So to be honest, it's just a tip of the iceberg that we have just demonstrated today. Things are currently things we are building on this front are pretty crazy. So yeah, that's pretty much it I wanted to share with everyone. So I'll just give my screen back to David. So any questions? I would like, if you guys have any, so drop it in the comments, maybe reach out to us. So yeah, thanks. Back to you, David.
Thank you, Cameron, for showing our viewers how this vulnerability can be exploited by HackerGPT. Remember that once a vulnerability becomes publicly known, it's just a matter of time before your system is subjected to exploitation. So what are the benefits of ethical hacking? Here on the screen, we have 4. The first is improved security. Ethical hackers can help organizations identify and address vulnerabilities in their systems and networks. This allows companies to protect their sensitive data and assets. The second is compliance. Ethical hackers can help organizations comply with regulatory requirements and industry standards for data security. The third is cost savings. By proactively identifying and addressing vulnerabilities, organizations can avoid the costly consequences of data breaches and reputational damage. Finally, the fourth is to prevent a disaster. Ethical hackers can identify and report vulnerabilities that actual attackers are going to use to infiltrate your system. So now we have another question for the audience. Which cybersecurity benefits of these are you most interested in? For those of you who are watching the live stream, please post your answers in the comment section. So now let's talk about the benefits of a penetration test report. Penetration tests are commonly used in 5 of the most common compliance frameworks. We offer our penetration tests as a support tool for auditors and clients to help them obtain the following compliance certifications. Here are the 5: 27001 compliance, PCI compliance, SOC 2, HIPAA, and FINRA. If your organization is seeking compliance certification in any of these 5 frameworks, please contact us after the webinar to learn more about how we can assist you. So what is White Hat Labs and what do we do? White Hat Labs is a security testing and evaluation company. We discover security weaknesses before attackers do. Overall, we give you an X-ray into your organization's security posture. And what are the offensive security services provided by White Hat Labs? We offer 2 basic services. The first is a penetration or pen test, and the second is a red team engagement. The difference between the two is that a red team engagement contains an element of surprise, while a penetration test does not. This concludes today's webinar. We have here on the screen some useful contact information, including our email address for inquiries. Also, you can find useful links to our social media pages to read more about us. Thank you so much for being with us today.